My name's Neil D'Souza from Ontario Private Mortgages, host of the Leadership to Wealth podcast, and your host today here for Magic Mondays. I know we started a little bit late today, guys. Good old technical difficulties gets us all. But here we go, and I want to introduce to you always the illustrious Jason Vaz, my co-host.
Everybody, how you doing? I'm doing well. I want to do a big shout out to DJ Sick Kick for that phenomenal intro. By far, one of my favorites.
Love it. And DJ Sidekick will also appreciate that shout out. And also my man, Marlon Yee, man. Welcome.
What's going on, everyone? What's going on? Marlon Mortgages and IG. We're now called Pineapple Mortgages, by the way. So all good.
Pineapple Financial.
Yep.
Love it. Well, if you're looking for a tropical flavor, if you're looking for something sweet, clearly reach out to Marlon. He is single, by the way. Just saying. We just put that out there. We're turning this into a single show while we're talking about all of these things. Guys, we have got a really interesting topic. In all seriousness, we got an interesting topic for you today. We're going to be talking about pre-construction or pre-con, if you ever hear the term. Now, you may have a lot of questions about that, and we're going to try to answer as many of those questions as we can for you. But before we do that, we know that right now in the news, what's been going on, we know that, of course, COVID, a lot of the restrictions have been lifted, including being able to you can go to a club now and you don't have to wear a mask while you're dancing. Any thoughts on the opening of the restrictions?
I'll jump into that. It's exciting. I'm glad it's available. Personally, I will not partake. I've grown accustomed to covering my face when I go inside buildings, and I intend on continuing that.
All right, Jason. Keeping it safe and allowing us to be conscious in amongst other people and keeping everybody safe. Love it. Okay. Anything on that, Marlon, that you want to jump in?
Same kind of stuff. I mean, I don't know about dancing. I heard you can only dance in your actual booth area. You can't actually walk from table to table. There is no dance floor. So you're pretty much dancing by your couch and your bottles. I think you can do that at home. So I don't think we're anywhere close to where we need to be. But, it's going to take time to get back to where it is. But I mean, I'm happy to see the service industry reopen. I'm happy to see the venues open. I'm happy to see the job creation. I'm happy to see the downtown core come back to life, to be honest. So I think it's just one step in the right direction. So,
yeah,
Dougie's saying no more lockdowns, 90%. But, politicians. So
right. Well, I'll tell you what I really appreciate about this is the mental health aspect, because I understand that people have been in a really disempowered state for the last year and a half and trying to figure out what do they do. No one was prepared for this type of a lockdown and what that has to do with your mental health, having to look at the same four walls all the time and be with the same people all the time. And it's really taken an impact. And we're seeing it in so many different areas, which we can't get into right now. But I really appreciate the lifting of the restrictions right now for no other reason other than it gives people the opportunity to be able to be a little bit closer with other people and for the mental health support that we get out of it. So I think that's really something that's the humanity side of it, right? So let's get into it, guys. We want to talk about this topic because it is it's a little known. It's out there often, but most people don't really know where to go with this topic of pre-con. And before we talk about what we think about it, can Marlon, can you give us a little bit of a breakdown of what pre-construction is?
Oh, yeah, sure. I mean, pre-construction, there's two types of properties out there, which Jason can confirm as well as a realtor. There's generally what we call the resale market. So these are properties that are already being built, someone's been living in them for quite some time, and they're up for sale. Pre-construction are specific sites that there's nothing built there yet. You're pretty much buying off plans or specs. It could be a project that's going to be ready in 3 to 4 to 5 years, and it gives consumers an option to get into the market, at a premium. But it gets you into the market because there's a schedule of down payments that you can make. So instead of coming up with 100,000 off the bat, they say give us 100,000 over a period of 2 to 3 years, right? So it helps a lot of first-time home buyers.
Okay, and now when it comes to pre-construction, normally we talk about it with regards to just condominiums.
Yeah, no, there's also townhomes and there's also detached homes.
Okay, great. Okay, so it's really just a term to cover that construction phase before the property is actually built out, and we'll talk a little bit about the contracts and the buying in that period. Safe to say?
Safe to say, yeah.
All right, great. Okay, so where does someone start? So you're saying, Marlon, that if someone is going to be buying and they get to pay it over time, what's really the advantage of that, other than, hey, if I don't have the money right now, I can pay a little bit as we go?
That is actually the primary advantage. Like if you don't have all the down payment right now, it gives you time to accumulate the down payment. It gives you time to get into a project. So the way some of these pre-constructions are structured is that, the first level is called a VIP sale. So there are certain specific realtors out there who get VIP access, meaning they get first pick of the lot of certain units, and they potentially get, the lowest price of this project, right? So potentially you could, after a year or so, make some money on this project, because after VIP, they'll have platinum, and then they'll have maybe another one after that. But each time they have another round, the price automatically goes up, right? So if you're able to get in on the VIP stage, you're getting in on the bottom of the pricing list, right? So over a year's time, after they've done 3 or 4 sales rounds, your unit could easily have gone up maybe $50,000, right? So there is some potential for appreciation there. Having said that, a lot of pre-cons are priced into the future. So you really are banking not only on the way it's structured, but you're also banking by the time you close in 3 to 4 years, hopefully the condo market or whatever pre-construction market you're at has gone up to that level that you originally bought at or more, right? Fortunately, in the GTA, we've seen that with most condominiums. Granted, except for the period during COVID, we did see a little bit of pullback there. But yeah, you're buying in the future, but really this is meant for the buyer who just needs to get their foot through the door.
Okay, and Jason, can you just jump in there about the VIP realtor special? Tell us about that.
Yes, simply put, if there's agents like myself, I focus on resale. However, there's plenty of agents in my office that do focus on pre-construction. Now, what happens is we've done a couple of deals with a builder. A builder realizes, hey, they know where their bread is buttered. You know what I mean? So they'll give incentives to selective agents, whether that be like free parking, preferred prices, first pick on lots, on units. Because let's face it, you're buying a pre-construction condo on a 50-story building, and your agent can only get you stuff on the 5th floor. Probably not the guy you want to go to. So yeah, VIP agents will probably get first pick. They're able to discuss these deals with their clients before it's made public. That being said, it's very rare that a building actually even goes public. There is a mandate of how many units they have to keep to go public, but they usually sell out most of it. The background on that is that 70% of the building has to be sold before they can start construction. So there's a huge incentive for them to sell it.
Okay.
Yeah, VIP agents are the way to go when you're looking to buy a pre-construction condo.
What I can say about that from the investing side, people have been doing this for quite a long time, where they literally are buying at that lower price when it's first released from probably the VIP realtors like yourself, and then they are really allowing for the property to, as it's being completed, as they move into the second, third, as they get closer and closer to completing the building, and then they turn around and they look to sell the property at a profit, because now the next person doesn't have to wait as long, all of that kind of stuff. And people have been buying and selling that way pre-construction for a long time, but we're kind of talking about two different issues: people that are investing that way, and then buyers that don't have the money right now. Can you say something about in the investors that are doing that? Because I know for a fact that realtors were some of the number one buyers of those properties in pre-con.
You're absolutely correct. So yeah, I have a different philosophy on real estate investing. Pre-construction is a little different. Pre-construction is very speculative. As Marlon mentioned, you are, in most cases, you're not buying in, like, if a project was to open today, we wouldn't be buying in 2021's prices. If the project was to say they predict it'll be completed in 2024, the builder is going to project that price, and that's what they're going to sell it to you for. Now, when you're speculating that, hey, the market is going to outperform what the builder expects. That's a risky bet for investors. Some people like that risk, but more importantly is the reward isn't that great, in my opinion. We're looking at, hey, potentially there'll be a 10% gain. You buy anything in Toronto and wait 3 years, you're going to make more than 10%. If you're going to speculate anywhere, I think Toronto is the place you want to speculate in. Where I start to get a little disconcerted is these, like, for example, there was a huge project that was being advertised to me like crazy in Hamilton. Now, Hamilton's a great market for cash flow properties, triplexes, and things like that. But the way they were selling it was like, oh, you're paying half the price you would in Toronto. Well, Hamilton's not Toronto. It should never be. It's not even worth half of what Toronto is. It's just different markets. And what you had a rush of investors that said, hey, for what I'm putting down on a condo in Toronto, I can get 2 in Hamilton. And they were rushing in there. And now, to answer your question with realtors, what some of them were doing is, and this is a disclaimer, these builders pay us handsomely to hand your money over to them. Red flag, in my opinion. But hey, what do I know? So what these agents were doing is they'll say, hey, you know what? Instead of paying me my compensation, put it towards a down payment. Start putting it that way. So I'll bring you 10 people, you give me a condo for free. Right? Wow. At least cover the down payment part, like cover the 20%, because it equates to that much. They're paying, like, some of these projects, I've seen projects paying 6%. That's not split between your two agents. That's one person collecting that 6%. I'd never charge someone that. So I always look at the incentives, right? If something's a good investment, they shouldn't have to incentivize it. But hey, like, as I said, it's different strategies. Some people like the speculative. I'm more on the cash flow side of things. I love cash flow.
Okay, well, that sounds great. Now, Irene Lee says, "I don't think."
Irene, how you doing?
Speculative.
By the way, guys, Irene, huge VIP agent. This woman knows her shit. Now, Irene, I want to quickly address it. Irene, 100%. I don't think pre-construction as a whole is speculative, but I know you and I could agree. There's a lot of bad projects out there. Before we went live, we were talking about it. The unfortunate souls that bought into ICE condos, they would disagree.
Well, can you say something about the speculative nature of pre-con?
Yeah, there was a time where everyone thought if you bought it, it's going to grow. It's not necessary. Now, Tridel has a building, Pinnacle, right next to 10 York, one York, around that area.
Now, Tridel's known as a very reputable builder.
Exactly, and if you're buying into that, I think it's a pretty safe bet you're going to make some money. However, some of these other builders, some of these other things, it's like I think one came up, like, it was a deal in Mississauga. There's an agent who's pushing it, and the way he's pushing it, it just, like, there's certain things you can see. If they're advertising to people who don't live in Canada, if they're saying, like, hey, are you on a student visa? Just this much and you can own a place. It's like you're kind of scraping the bottom of the barrel there trying to get these people in. And then, yeah, so Irene agrees. Thank you. But yeah, so the reality is that I'm going back to when I say speculative mainly is that when you run the numbers on a condo, for me, like the way I run my numbers, you're usually looking at a negative cash flow. That being said, if you look at your principal pay down and you factor in all the numbers, it can be made up, but the same principles could be applied to a cash flow property, and you just get more cash flow.
Okay. So what about from a regular buyer's perspective? Is it still speculative for them, for a home buyer?
Not at all. Not at all.
Yeah, not at all. I mean, like pre-construction, as I said, are mostly meant for, these days at least, you'd have to say they're meant for single people. I mean, living in a 450 square foot apartment is very difficult for a couple. So again, it's all about entry point. You know, these units do serve their purpose in the market. You have to remember we are expecting, large immigration numbers coming through again, hopefully after everyone's all vaccinated. And most immigrants come here for the first 3 years to rent a place, especially if they're working in downtown core. So all this demand is being sucked up by investors. I think the latest stats show 1 in 4 purchases of condos in a downtown core are actually purchased for investment properties, right? So there is some speculation there, but there is also demand that's going to take up that speculation, right? So.
Right. Well, okay. So here's the question I've got on that. Because to me, there sounds like there's also a huge amount of speculation, even on that front. Because you guys just mentioned about the ice condos, the ice bridge. I'm not sure, whatever the name of that project is, and someone who's buying into one of these may not know who else is going to be buying into this property. Is that not a serious concern, even for someone who is like, I don't have the money to get into another project, but if this is all I've got and I put it into this property and I have no idea what it's going to turn out like in terms of the demographics of the building, is that not a concern for the buyer?
That can be a major concern, and I don't think it's that goes for both sides, pre-construction freehold and pre-construction condos. You don't know your neighborhood. And let's face it, like in the short term, you're probably going to see a gain just because there is a demand to live in these areas. There is a shortage of supply. So obviously, whenever you present some supply, it gets eaten up. So in the short term, yes, you're always going to make money. It's in the long term. Eventually, areas get built up. And then people start to pick and choose where they want to go. And for me personally, like one of the things I do for my clients when we're buying resale is I look at the average income, household income of a place, and I run that back. I reverse engineer and I say, hey, the people that live in this area, could they afford to buy in this area today? To me, that's a good precursor to tell me what direction the neighborhood's going into. For example, if the average price of a home in an area is $1 million and the average household income is $50,000, I can tell you right now it's going to hit. There's going to be a threshold they hit. It will convert over, but it's going to take some time. On the flip side, if the average home price is $500,000 and the average household income is $150,000, it's a safe bet. Like say, hey, we should buy there because there are wealthy people that live there. It's people that build a community. It's not the brick and mortar. I don't want to pounce on nice condos too much, but yeah, the reality is you don't know when you're buying. There are certain indicators like, okay, if the average price is $750,000, you have an idea because not everyone can afford that. The ones that have the incentive pricing where it's like, hey, they're trying to get rid of their main floor and they're just discounting it out to hit numbers. Again, that you could bring in an element that you don't necessarily want in your building.
Right. That's a great point. Well, I can tell you from the investment side, one of the things that we saw was obviously, as I mentioned, a large number of people that were scooping up pre-cons and really they're just having to sort of service it with the hope that as they went along, they would be able to sell it at a higher amount, knowing that, okay, I'm purchasing it at this price. Now, what we've seen, and I think Marlon, you can talk more about this. What we've seen is a number of, I'm going to call it the loopholes being closed up. For instance, assignment clauses. At one point you could go in there, you'd be able to assign it, no problem. You pass it over to someone else as you got closer to the completion date, and you could sell it for the value at that point in time, including everything that you had put into it. And so thereby everyone's good. The other thing is that when you were buying it originally, when it's first released, you're paying one amount for it versus I think now builders are starting to factor that in terms of when you're buying it, you're tending to pay for the as complete value. And so I know that market has really changed a lot for pre-construction. There might be some people that are still able to capitalize on it, but I think a lot of those investor loopholes is kind of closed up. Do you want to address that?
Yeah, I'll speak to that briefly. I can't say that I don't do many assignments, to be honest with you. I did do a lot many years ago. I don't see too many these couple of years, but the assignment's still there. There are lenders that will lend to you on the assignment value. So I wouldn't say the loopholes have closed in terms of financing, but in terms of government watch, there's definitely a big push by the government to catch people who are buying many units and are signing them for a profit and maybe not declaring the income. Right, that was going on for quite some time, right? So I think what's very interesting on the lending side, though, is that we do have lenders. If you do decide to close on the condos, these people that decide to close, these lenders that are out here right now, there's only a handful of them. We call them alternative lenders or B lenders. They will lend to you on the current market value of the property. So, if you bought something back in the day for $800 a square feet, usually at any other lender, when you close, you're going to close at $800 a square feet. They're going to lend you on the original purchase price. You paid $800,000 for it. When it closes, they're going to only lend you on $800,000 purchase price, but the property could be worth 1.2. There are new lenders now, the alternative lenders. They will lend you on the 1.2 and allow you to take out 80% of that money. So essentially, you're taking back out your investment funds, and now you can apply to go buy another property. So to me, that speaks confidence to the pre-construction market, that at least these lenders feel confident enough to lend at the current market value, and again to lend to you again to buy another property, right? So if you decide to close in it, there are ways to get your money out and go back into something else.
So I want to just quickly step in on what Marlon just said, and that changes the landscape completely. Again, you buy something for $800,000 today. And then when you close on it, you get a mortgage as if it's the purchase price is 1.2. Then it makes sense. It makes perfect sense to do it. I'll do that deal any day because my cash isn't touching it. I have a debt obligation. It is a liability on it. But the reality of it all is, like when I run the numbers here, we're looking at like the cost associated is about $2,000 a year. So it costs me $2,000 a year out of pocket, but my money I'm now able to use towards other things. So my $160,000 that I had to put down in order to close this deal is now back in my pocket. That's something you need to keep in mind there, guys. If your cash is not there anymore and it's back in your bank account and all it's costing you is $2,000 a year to keep this thing afloat, it's a good investment. It's a safer bet. Where people are making the mistake is their money is tied up in there. And a good example, near Durham College, they built, and this is the other thing with the lending. You gotta pay if you're looking to do pre-construction investing. Make sure you understand your lending. Durham College. I don't know I don't remember the exact address, but anybody who's shopped around the area, basically what happened was they built a bunch of dorms. They built a bunch of studio condos that are about 350, 400 square feet. Now these went for about 150. Very easy entry point. Then they started selling them on the resale market for 200. Big problem came up. No bank wants to fund these deals. A lot of banks don't like student rentals. They also don't like small units. So now people are pretty much giving them away. Now remember, I said they started at 150. Then they started selling for $200, $50,000 profit. They're back to about 160 right now. People will do. They'll literally sell it to you for what they bought it for, just so they can get out of it, because they can't do anything with it. They can't borrow against it. They can't get their money out of it. They can't refinance the deal. More than likely, what they've done is they've leveraged another property to buy it out in full. And in situations like that, you're kind of left there. The mobility that you have with real estate diminishes. So understand your lending. So the deal that Marlon just kind of put on the table, I would definitely, anyone who's looking or is in a contract for pre-construction, explore that. That changes the playing field completely.
Wow. Okay. So I guess we really got to come to the question that we started this thing out with. Why do people love pre-con? And do you guys love pre-con?
I think Marlon and I are on the same side. I agree it has its place in the real estate ecosystem, but so does phytoplankton. Doesn't mean I love it. No, do I agree that it should exist?
That's a good one. That's a good one.
So what you're saying is from an investment standpoint, you clearly don't love it. But Marlon, from a buyer standpoint, do you love it?
So I think the way Jason's looking at everything is, if you look at all the options out there, and if you had the cash for any of these options, yes, it's probably not the most ideal option. But looking at it from the point of view of a first-time home buyer or someone who has limited cash as an investor, it's a great way to get your foot through the market, right? Get your foot into the market. Just the way it's structured, you're going to make some gains. Depending on where you're renting, you may make some gains as well. So I like it. I've helped many clients, buy their first, second, and third home, and they all started with pre-construction. They put maybe 100,000 down. A couple of years later, they sold. They made $250,000. They would have never been able to save $250,000 themselves, right? So obviously there's some leverage going on there. There is some compounding of money and all that stuff, and it gave them the opportunity to move from, say, a pre-construction condo to a townhouse, a resale townhouse, and then another couple of years the market's doing quite well. Now they're in a multi-million-dollar home, right? So it's a stepping stone for many people, and I think it has its place. So I like it personally for single first-time home buyers who have limited access to down payment and may also need time to build up their income to a certain level in order to qualify in the future as well. I think it's a great option. As an investor, it has its place as well too in building a portfolio. And a cash flow portfolio may be difficult in the GTA, but there are ways to do it. And if you talk to VIP agents who specialize in pre-cons, they've built massive portfolios themselves, of which there's passive income being built here. So there's ways to do it. You just need to find the right people to work with. So
exactly.
Yeah.
I think, Neil, yourself, I'd love to hear what you would think about this. I know it's something that you don't really dive into, but I'm curious to know, like, for your investment strategy, do you see this fitting your portfolio, that you've built or planning to build?
Yeah, that's a great question. And so from the investment side, let me say a couple of things. First of all, I want to say that every opportunity is to be evaluated on its own merit. One property is going to be, one pre-con is very different from another pre-con, and you really want to do your due diligence on the area as a whole. If a property is getting built into that area, I think it's really important to look at it that way, as opposed to what we saw for a while, where just the word pre-con, automatically people jumped onto a bandwagon and said it's going to make money, and they just saw dollar signs for some reason. Even if they were just buyers and they were looking to move on it, there was this perception that it's an automatic moneymaker. And so I say, number one, do your due diligence. Make sure you actually want to live in the area, because if you don't want to live in the area, chances are that you may have a difficult time finding anyone else that does want to. So that's number one. Number two, what I would say is that there is huge opportunities in this type of market, because when you do close on these properties, there's a lot of, especially with the world of Airbnb, there's so much opportunity to be able to make money on these properties for all sorts of clientele. Again, you've got to look to see if it's in the right demographics. I mean, I've seen people that have bought some of these properties and then they're renting out rooms. We talked about dorms. They might buy a 2 or 3 unit apartment, a condo, and then they're literally renting it out by the rooms, shared facilities, great cash flow. They're doing really well. But it's a part of a strategy. And so I would say you need to look at it clearly. The final thing that I would advise anyone that actually closes on a condo, and I just would say this about condos in general, I think there's great value in actually being on part of the condo committee. I've seen this many times where properties aren't maintained properly, and a lot of that has to do with the condo committee. So I say, if you're in a segment where you're not entirely sure, but you want to protect your investment when, as a buyer going into one of these, I would say if you can get in on that condo committee so you can be a part of making sure that it's taken care of properly and all the maintenance, all of these kind of things, because at the end of the day, you're protecting your investment. So that's kind of my thought on when it comes to pre-con. And to me, there's far too much data from an investment side to go in a whole bunch of other directions, and rather than pre-con. So that's definitely not my niche. So that's what I would say about that. Any final words on pre-con, gentlemen? That says it all. We love it if you're a buyer and you've got a purpose for it. Otherwise, we're going to move on, and that we're going to move on from this show. We hope that we haven't totally put it in the funnel or at the bottom of the funnel for you, but there's definitely lots of other opportunities that we're going to be talking about in weeks ahead. Thank you guys so much for watching. On behalf of my co-host Jason Vaz and Marlon Mortgages, Marlon Yee,
guys. Thanks for tuning in.
Thank you guys so much, and we'll see you guys next week.
Like and share, guys.